Blind date disaster? The waitress dropped a note saying, "She's not who you think." Michael sat alone at the corner table, adjusting his navy blazer for the third time in 5 minutes. At 58, he thought he'd outgrown the nervousness of first dates. But here he was, palms slightly damp, heart beating just a bit faster than usual. The restaurant his daughter had chosen was elegant without being pretentious, warm lighting casting gentle shadows across white tablecloths. He checked his watch again. 7:15. She was 15 minutes late. His mind drifted back to how he'd ended up here. 3 years since Margaret passed. 3 years of well-meaning friends and his daughter, Emma, insisting he should get back out there. He'd resisted for so long. But last month, Emma had practically begged him to try one of those dating apps. Just one date, she'd said. What's the worst that could happen? So he'd created a profile. Feeling ridiculous typing out his interests and posting photos, Emma had helped him choose. And then he'd matched with someone named Victoria. Her profile said she was 55, loved classical music and gardening, and had recently moved to town after retiring from teaching. Their messages had been pleasant, easy. She seemed kind. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation around him. An older couple 2 tables over held hands across their meals. A business dinner was wrapping up near the windows, and Michael sat alone, wondering if he'd been stood up. Then he saw her. A woman in a striking red dress glided through the entrance, scanning the room. She was beautiful. There was no denying that. With carefully styled dark hair and makeup that belonged in a fashion magazine. But something felt off immediately. She looked younger, much younger than her profile suggested. Mid-30s, perhaps. And there was something brittle in the way she moved. The way her eyes assessed the restaurant like she was calculating something. She spotted him and her face transformed into a brilliant smile. Too brilliant. Michael had taught high school English for 33 years before retiring. He knew when someone was performing. "Michael?" she called out, her voice carrying across the restaurant in a way that made him wince slightly. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry I'm late." Traffic was absolutely insane. She air-kissed both his cheeks before he could even stand properly, then settled into her chair with a practiced grace that seemed rehearsed. Up close, the age difference was even more apparent. The woman in the photos had had laugh lines around her eyes, a softness that spoke of life lived fully. This woman's face was smooth, carefully maintained. "Victoria?" he asked, though he already knew something was wrong. "Please call me Vicky," she said, flashing that smile again. "Everyone does." Michael's discomfort grew as she launched into a monologue about her day, her voice never quite matching the gentle, thoughtful tone from their messages. She name-dropped expensive brands, mentioned luxury vacations, talked about her investment portfolio in a way that felt like she was checking boxes on a script. A waitress appeared at their table, blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing the restaurant's simple black uniform. She looked to be in her early 30s, with kind eyes that reminded Michael of his daughter. "Good evening," she said warmly. "My name is Sophie, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with something to drink?" "I'll have a cosmopolitan," Vicky said without looking up from her phone. "Top shelf vodka, please." "Just water for me," Michael said, offering Sophie an apologetic smile. "Thank you." As Sophie moved away, Vicky leaned forward, her expression shifting to something that might have been meant to look intimate but felt invasive instead. "So, Michael, your profile mentioned you're retired. That must be nice. I'm actually in a bit of a transitional period myself right now. Between opportunities, you know how it is." Something cold settled in Michael's stomach. The Victoria from the messages had been clear about her retirement from teaching, had shared stories about her former students. This woman spoke like someone who'd memorized lines without understanding the character. "I thought you said you'd just retired from teaching." He ventured carefully. "Oh, right, yes. Vicky said, waving her hand dismissively. 20 years in education. Absolutely exhausting. I'm so glad to be done with all those demanding parents and difficult children. Michael thought of his own career, of the students whose lives he'd touched. The thank you notes he still kept in a box at home. Teaching had never felt like something to be done with in that bitter tone. It had been his calling. Sophie returned with their drinks, and as she set them down, her movements were careful, deliberate. She placed Michael's water in front of him, and then something unusual happened. As she set down Vicky's Cosmopolitan, she also placed a small folded napkin beside Michael's hand, so discreetly that Vicky, absorbed in reapplying her lipstick, didn't notice. Sophie's eyes met his for just a fraction of a second, and there was something urgent in her gaze. A warning. Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes? Sophie asked. Give us a few minutes, Vicky said, still not looking at Sophie. As Sophie walked away, Michael glanced down at the napkin. His heart began to pound. Slowly, trying to appear casual, he unfolded it beneath the table. The handwriting was quick but clear. She's not who you think. The real Victoria is stuck in the parking lot with a flat tire. I helped her. This woman used her photos. Be careful. Michael's blood ran cold. He looked up at the woman across from him, who was now studying the menu with exaggerated interest, and everything clicked into place. The age difference, the contradictions, the performative nature of every gesture. He'd heard about this, of course. Catfishing, his daughter called it. People creating fake profiles using others' photos. But he'd never imagined it happening to him, and certainly not in person like this. What was this woman's game? Money? Some kind of scam? So, Vicky said, setting down her menu with a dramatic sigh. I have to be honest with you, Michael. I'm in a bit of a difficult situation right now. Here it comes, he thought. My ex-husband, he's been absolutely terrible about the divorce settlement. I'm living in a temporary place, waiting for everything to be finalized, and it's just been so stressful. Thank goodness I met someone like you. Someone stable, you know, established. She reached across the table and placed her hand on his. Her nails were long, painted bright red to match her dress. Michael looked at that hand, at the calculating expression poorly disguised as vulnerability, and felt something shift inside him. Not anger exactly. Something more like sadness. Sadness for whatever had brought this young woman to this place, where she thought this was an acceptable way to live. And sadness for the real Victoria, whoever she was, whose identity had been stolen for this purpose. But also, underneath the sadness, a kind of strength. The same strength that had helped him survive Margaret's death, that had helped him learn to live alone, to find new purpose in his days. Excuse me for just a moment, he said, removing his hand gently and standing. I need to use the restroom. He walked through the restaurant, but instead of heading to the restroom, he caught Sophie's eye at the bar where she was putting in an order. She saw him and immediately stepped aside to a quiet corner near the kitchen. Thank you for the note, Michael said quietly. Where is she? The real Victoria. Sophie's expression filled with relief. Oh, thank goodness you believe me. She's in the parking lot, bay level, northwest corner. Blue Honda. She's waiting for roadside assistance, but they said it'll be another hour. She was almost in tears. She'd been messaging with you for weeks, she said. Was really looking forward to meeting you. Michael felt his chest tighten. How did you know? I helped her with her tire, tried to at least. She showed me a photo of you from your messages. Told me she was so nervous about being late. Then 5 minutes later, I see that woman. Sophie gestured toward the table, sitting with you, and I recognized you from the photo. Knew something was wrong. Why would someone do this? Michael asked, though he was starting to understand. I've been a waitress for 12 years, Sophie said softly. I've seen a lot. That woman's done this before. Different man, different night. Same MO. Always ends with some sob story about money. Usually they're too embarrassed to report it. Michael nodded slowly, his mind working through the options. He could simply leave, walk away, find Victoria in the parking lot. But something stopped him. Maybe it was all those years of teaching, of trying to reach troubled students. Maybe it was just who he was. "What's her real name?" he asked. "Do you know?" "I heard someone call her Jessica once," Sophie said. "Michael, you should know that the manager is aware. If you want us to ask her to leave, or if you feel unsafe, we will handle it." "No," Michael said quietly. "Not yet, but could you do me a favor? Could you check on Victoria? Let her know I know what happened, and that I'd like to meet her if she's willing to wait." Sophie's face broke into a genuine smile. "You're a good man. I'll go right now." Michael returned to the table where Jessica was typing rapidly on her phone. She looked up as he sat down, that practiced smile returning. "Everything okay?" she asked. "I need to be honest with you," Michael said, his voice calm but firm. "I know you're not Victoria." The smile froze on her face, then slowly melted away. For a moment, something real flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or shame. "I don't know what you mean," she said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "The real Victoria is in the parking lot with a flat tire," Michael continued. "The waitress helped her and recognized me from a photo. I'm not angry, but I am curious. Why?" Jessica's hands were shaking slightly. She set down her Cosmopolitan and seemed to shrink in her chair, the performance falling away to reveal someone much younger and more lost than she'd first appeared. "I needed the money," she said finally, her voice small. "I have a system. Meet men, tell them a sob story, they usually offer to help. A couple hundred here and there. It's not like I'm robbing anyone." "Except you are," Michael said gently. "You're robbing them of their dignity, their trust. You're robbing the real Victoria of a chance at connection, and you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to be someone better than this." Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Michael saw something authentic. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I lost my job 6 months ago. I can't find anything that pays enough to cover my rent. I'm 2 months behind. I'm desperate." Michael was quiet for a long moment, watching the young woman across from him struggle with emotions she'd clearly been suppressing. He thought about judgment, about how easy it would be to simply walk away in righteous anger. But he also thought about grace, about the fact that everyone he'd ever known was fighting battles, invisible to others. "Desperation makes us do things we never thought we would," he said finally. "I understand that. But Jessica, this path only leads to more desperation, more shame. You're better than this." "You don't even know me," she said, wiping at her eyes, her mascara beginning to smudge. "No, I don't," Michael agreed. "But I taught high school for over 30 years. I know what it looks like when someone is hurting and making bad choices, because they can't see another way." "What did you used to do before you lost your job?" "Marketing coordinator," she said quietly, "for a small firm that went under." "And you were good at it?" "I was great at it," she said, a flash of pride breaking through. "I built their entire social media presence from nothing." Michael reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet, extracting a business card that his daughter had made him get when he'd started doing volunteer work at the community center. "This is going to sound strange," he said, sliding the card across to her. "But my daughter runs a nonprofit that helps women get back on their feet after setbacks. They have job training, resume help, even emergency housing assistance. I want you to call this number tomorrow. Tell them Michael sent you. Tell them the truth about what's been happening." Jessica stared at the card like it might bite her. "Why would you help me, after what I tried to do?" "Because someone helped me once," Michael said simply. "When my wife died, I couldn't see a way forward. Couldn't imagine a life without her. A friend refused to let me disappear into that grief. He showed me that kindness even when it's not deserved, can change everything. So I'm passing that along. The tears came freely now, and Jessica didn't try to hide them. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are," Michael said. "Now, I'm going to pay for your drink, and then I'm going to leave. You're going to call that number tomorrow, and you're never going to do this to anyone else again. Agreed?" Jessica nodded, clutching the card like a lifeline. Michael caught Sophie's eye and gestured for the check. When it came, he left enough cash to cover the drink and a generous tip, along with an extra $50. "Make sure she gets home safely," he told Sophie quietly. "And thank you for everything." Sophie squeezed his hand. "Victoria's waiting for you, Bay Level Northwest corner. She's lovely, by the way." Michael walked out of the restaurant into the cool evening air, his heart lighter than it had been in hours. The parking structure was dimly lit, but he found the blue Honda easily. Beside it, a woman sat on the concrete barrier, and even in the poor lighting, he could see she matched the real profile photos. Soft brown hair, warm eyes, a gentle smile that reached those eyes as she looked up at him. "Victoria?" he asked. "Michael," she said, standing up, brushing off her dress. It was simple and elegant, appropriate for a woman. In her 50s, who knew who she was and didn't need to prove anything. "I'm so sorry. What a disaster of a first impression." "Actually," Michael said, "I think it might be the best first impression possible. After all, I got to meet you through an act of kindness from a stranger, after choosing grace over anger with someone who needed it. That says something about the kind of evening this was meant to be." Victoria's smile widened, genuine and warm. "Sophie told me what you did. That was remarkably kind." "I had a good teacher," Michael said. "My late wife always said that we judge ourselves by our intentions, but others by their actions. I try to remember that everyone is fighting battles we know nothing about." "She sounds like she was a wonderful person." "She was," Michael said, and for the first time in 3 years, saying it didn't feel like his heart was breaking. It felt like gratitude. "And I think she'd be happy to know I was here tonight. Meeting someone new, choosing to keep living fully." "Well," Victoria said, glancing at her flat tire, "I don't suppose you know anything about changing tires?" Michael laughed, really laughed, for the first time that evening. "As it happens, I do, but I also have roadside assistance on my phone, and they're much faster than I am these days." As they waited together, sitting on that concrete barrier in a parking structure, they talked, really talked, about teaching and students and retirement and gardens and loss and hope and all the beautiful, complicated things that make up a life fully lived. And when the tow truck finally arrived and Victoria's tire was changed, Michael asked if perhaps she might like to try this again. "Dinner, maybe next week, at a different restaurant." "I'd like that very much," Victoria said, as Michael drove home that night. He thought about the strange paths life takes us on, how an attempted scam had led to an act of mercy, which had led to a genuine connection with someone who might become important to him, how the worst of humanity and the best of it could exist in the same evening, in the same parking lot, in the same heart learning to hope again. He thought about Jessica, too, hoping she'd make that call, hoping she'd choose a different path. And he thought about Sophie, the waitress whose simple act of kindness had prevented harm and created possibility. But mostly, he thought about second chances, the one he was giving himself by showing up for that date, the one he'd offered Jessica, the one Victoria was offering him by agreeing to try again despite the chaos of their first meeting. At 58, Michael was learning that life wasn't about avoiding disasters, or pain or disappointment. It was about how you responded to them, with grace, with hope, with the stubborn belief that kindness mattered, that people could change, that connection was always worth the risk. And as he pulled into his driveway, he sent Emma a text. First date was interesting. Tell you about it tomorrow, but I have a second date lined up. Thanks for pushing me to try. Her response came immediately. Dad! That's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. Michael smiled, locked his car, and walked into his house. Margaret's photo still sat on the mantel, and he paused to look at it as he did every night. I'm okay, he told her image softly. I'm going to be okay. And for the first time since she'd passed, he truly believed it. If this story touched your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. And please leave a comment below, telling me about a time when someone's small act of kindness made a big difference in your life. Your stories inspire me to keep writing, and they remind us all that compassion and connection are what make us human.